And in a couple of minutes, we'll chant one Om, and then I'll say the prayer, and then I'll introduce my friend Sonali, who's going to tell us, do a presentation on stress management. Okay, close your eyes, sit in Dhyan Mudra with your right hand in your left palm on your lap. Sit upright, and after a quick Rechak, we'll do a full Purak and we'll chant Om as we breathe out. Rechak, Purak, Om. Hands in Namaste. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Rub your palms together, spread the energy over your face, and open your eyes. And now I'd like to introduce my friend Sonali Sagre. She's a psychotherapist. She has a private practice, also has a full-time job, and she, on top of that, she also teaches at George Humber College, at Humber College. And she's part of our Ambika Yoga family of teachers, and she and her husband Jeetu teach the beginners class in the Ambika group. So I'll hand it over to Sonali. She's an expert on stress management, and you've already read her bio, so you know that she has the private practice. You can check out her website when you get a chance. And take it over, Sonali.
Thank you, Chitra. So give me 1 sec. I'm just gonna make sure that the PowerPoint is. I just want to slideshow from the beginning. Okay, everything is good now?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so first of all, thank you everyone to have me over here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the stress management with all of you. Even though I am presenting the stress management here, by any means, it's not that I'm the only expert. You all have been managing your stress throughout your life. So you definitely have some kind of like the coping mechanisms that you are using to deal with the stressful situations that we all go through. So I have some slides here that I would like to share with you based on my knowledge and experience, and also hearing from number of the clients that I work with. This is what I have learned from them, and I have managed my stress as well. So again, I will go through a couple of slides. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, or I will keep track of the chat. I will try to, or we can just have the conversations after. So I will try to finish the slide decks in like 40 to 45 minutes so that we have another 15 minutes to have some conversation if we need to. So what I'm going to try to do throughout this time that we are together is talk a little bit about like general awareness in relation to the stress and the management. I would also like to discuss few myths and the facts in relation to stress. I will talk a little bit about the window of tolerance, and the window of tolerance. Generally, I have done a lot of work with with the survivors of the trauma, and we do this work with in relation to the window of tolerance with them a lot. So I really thought I would bring this little bit information here so that you might be able to understand what window of tolerance is and how you can actually utilize your window of tolerance while you are in the stressful situations. And then I will just discuss a little bit regarding your self-help and the professional help. So that's what my goal is. But of course, I am totally flexible if you have any other things to discuss further. So to start with a couple of like myth and facts, I don't know if we could do this as a group discussion or maybe I will just talk because there are 42 people and it or 60 people. Okay, fair enough. I'm just going to talk. So the first thing, stress is a mental illness. So when we think about the fact and myth, this is a myth because stress is not a mental illness. We all, each and every individual, go through the stress. It's not just the human beings, like animals have a stress too, right? When I think about the stress, I'm not saying about the stress only with certain age. The prenatal, the child who is unborn, also go through the stressful situations as the mom goes through the stressful events. So it's not a mental illness, it's the normal thing that anybody and everybody will have. Second, stress can happen only to wins, not necessarily, as I said before, anybody and everyone will have a stressful event in their life. They might go from range to range. So some stressful events might be very basic or some might be very intense, but it can happen to everybody. The next myth is if I'm stressed, I should deal with it on my own. And that is 100% myth. I really want you to think about this specific one because I think certain cultures are as age, some people might feel the pressure not to talk about that stress with anybody. As older adults, they don't want to put that pressure on their children. Some kids may not want to put that burden on their families or on their parents. So it's not important to think about others. If you are stressed, you do not need to think about it on your own. You really have to talk to someone that you trust, that can support you or you feel connected with. And it doesn't have to be family or friend. It can be anybody that you feel comfortable to talk about these situations. The next myth, your family will understand your stressful situations. Not necessarily. Again, for the same reasonings, you may have your cultural belief, you may have your individual belief, you may have learned throughout your parenting or throughout your childhood experiences that may not be similar within the whole family structure. So those things definitely are not necessarily that your family members are able to help you or understand you. And in those situations, you may need to find a friend or a professional person that you may want to express your feelings and understand what is your stressful situation. I just have few more myths. I know it might seem like a little bit like too many, but I just really want to go through that because those are important things to really think about. So stress is same for everyone, not at all. My stress may not be the same as my son's stress or my husband's stress or my parents' stress. So stress is different for everyone. It is individualized based and it is dependent on how you understand that unique situation. The next stress is always bad for you. Not at all. Some stresses are really good for you. You should feel stressed about some little things in your life. And as we move on, I am going to give you examples around those. The next one, stress is everywhere. You can't do anything about it. The half part is a fact and half part is a myth because stress is everywhere. That is true. You just can't get away from stress, but you can definitely do something about it. And as we move on, we will talk about that as well. So the most popular stress reducing techniques are the best. And that's not true again, because you need to define and develop your own coping mechanisms to reduce your stress. There are thousands of stress reducing techniques, but not necessarily all of those will work for you. You really need to figure out what is comfortable for you, what is accessible for you, what is available for you during the time, who are the people that can help you. So that is really important. So just don't go Google and find some stress techniques because not necessarily they will be helpful for you. And the next one is no symptoms, no stress. And that is a huge myth because some people just internalize their stress. They do not express it, they don't talk about it, and they try to deal on it on their own. And that's where the challenge is because internal stress that keeps on adding and adding and adding, that leads to the multiple health situation over the period. So the next one now. So let's talk a little bit about what is stress, what are the types of stress, what is a good stress, what is a bad stress. So exploring the role of stress. So based on a definition or what I understand stress is like, stress can be understood as a healthy response to the threatening stimuli. So in here, as we say, it could be a healthy response. It doesn't have to be always unhealthy. However, ongoing triggering of the stress responses over the time can become health damaging. Because if that stress continues to be over the period, that definitely will lead to a difficult situation. So there are different things that impact on the stress. So the magnitude or the severity of the stress, which means the more significant the stress, the greater the impact will be. And when I say again regarding the magnitude or severity, I really want you to think about your own individual understanding regarding the magnitude and severity. As I said before, the stress that is severe for me not necessarily is severe for some other person because they might have a better coping mechanisms to deal with that stress. So these three things which are mentioned here are dependent on the individual. The frequency. The more often we experience stress, the greater or the cumulative impact is. And then the duration. So obviously, if the stress is like for a longer duration or keeps on happening all the time, then the impact is going to be longer. So we all know that we have an autonomic nervous system in our body, and this is part of our body that respond unconsciously and involuntarily to regulate our bodily function. So we are not aware that when our sympathetic nervous system is working or parasympathetic nervous system is working. However, our both the systems are so important for our body because they are going to manage our balance. So sympathetic nervous system is kind of responsible for fight or flight responses, while parasympathetic system helps to calm down our body. So giving simpler like layman terms, the sympathetic nervous systems increases the heart rate, increases the blood circulation, increases our respiratory rate. while the parasympathetic nervous system helps our body to calm down. So decreases our blood pressure, decreases our heart rate, decreases little bit of our respiration if we are too fast. So in a way, parasympathetic nervous system is responsible to calm us down or feel us more relaxed. So now we'll discuss a little bit regarding the stress. There are two types of stress. It's acute stress and the chronic stress. So how do you define acute and chronic? Or what are the differences? So the acute stress is a stress that is experienced in the event of challenges or threats. It activates our sympathetic nervous system to respond to the presenting challenge, threat, or danger. As I said, fight or flight response. This is a healthy stress. It is our body's appropriate response to the challenges and threats. So I will give you examples. Forget about the examples which are here, but think about example. If you are walking, if you're on your routine walk, and suddenly you see a snake or a bear, if you are in camping, how your body responds. You are in fight or flight mode. So that is a healthy stress response because your body knows exactly what to do. If you are just staying there without moving, that is, even though you are in a stressful situation, your sympathetic system told you as a fight or flight. So either stay there, be calm, don't move, or run away and get away from that situation. So that's a perfect example of an acute stress. Another common examples are here. Feeling nervous about a doctor's appointment because sometimes you have some difficulty, some health issues, and your doctor might give you some detailed information that you are a little bit afraid of to hear. Or your doctor might ask you to do some CT, MRI, or blood test because they want to know more in detail about what's happening in your body. So feeling nervous about that doctor's appointment is kind of a healthy stress because of course you need to know what's happening, right? Or if you want to perform well in a competitive game or in an event, that is again a little bit of like acute stress, but that is also might be a healthy stress. Responding to the dangerous situation in ways that keep us safe, as I gave you the example regarding a snake or staying in front of the bear, or if you are driving a car and suddenly you see someone is absolutely going to hit you and then you just apply the brakes. Again, that's the acute stress. Or the last one I would just give example is like having a job interview or getting a speeding ticket. Like if you see a car behind you who is honking you or who has their if there is a lights on, of course you are going to be in acute stress, right? So this is kind of some of the examples of the acute stress. Now let's move on to the chronic stress. So what is chronic stress? The chronic stress is a stress which continues over the period. It is more than just for a time being. It is maybe for days to days, or months to months, or continuously throughout the life. And that chronic stress is a problematic stress. And that's why we need to figure out what are our stress management strategies so that our body doesn't take a significant toll and harms or leads to the number of the illnesses. So this is the stress that feels like, oh gosh, it never goes away. This is like a pandemic stress right now. We all are having the pandemic stress. That's a perfect example, right? Like this pandemic stress for the whole year and a half, it's not going away. We all are dealing with that situation and we all feel it. Another examples are like the poverty, the people who are marginalized population or who live in a poverty, who have a financial issues, which are probably all their life around, that is definitely impacting their general well-being, their mental health, and their bodily functions. Or long-term illnesses, right? Like, and these illnesses, again, I don't want to name any of a specific illness because depending on people how they look at their illnesses, right? It could be a cancerous situation, it could be like any Chronic migraines might be a long-term illness for someone. So I don't want to define like one or other as an example. It depends on how people see their illnesses as a short-term or long-term basis. Another example is living with an abusive person, and it doesn't have to be partner, brother, sister, dad, mother. It could be anybody. Even if you are in a job and you are in the same job for 20 years, but there is your boss who is an abusive person. And abuse doesn't have to be sexual abuse or physical abuse. Emotional abuse is equal as sexual, physical in my world, because emotional abuse is not something that anybody can see it. It is the person who is exposed to that emotional abuse. Like we see microaggression throughout our life, anywhere and everywhere, right? So just being mindful about that, because microaggression can be seen as an abuse to someone. And then the death of our loved one. That is obviously a chronic stress because that doesn't go away. So just to continue, or just connection with sympathetic and parasympathetic system, like our bodies are made to respond to that acute stress or chronic stress. And it does take significant toll on our whole entire body, because our gastrointestinal system, like when you are stressed, you are producing a lot of hormones which are damaging to your body. So cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenaline. So they are pouring more than the normal, and it impacts on our bodily functions. So sometimes people have like gastric impact, right? Like they feel unease, their stomach is like always pouring acid and really feeling unwell. So that's why, again, just the example regarding sympathetic and parasympathetic, they both need to work together so that that parasympathetic system can bring your body to the calmness, or let the body rest and relax. So again, if people struggle with ongoing chronic stress, they might develop a lot of like health issues which are detrimental to the health. Now let's little bit focus regarding the stress in older adults. Because again, as I said before, the stress is throughout the life, maybe prenatal for some people. There is stress for kids, there is stress for teenagers, there is stress for youth, because every stage of life, there are expectations not only from yourself, but from your friends, from your family, from your jobs, from the environment around you. So people are getting a lot of different reasons why they are under the stressful situations. Let's focus a little bit about like stress in older adults. So what happens over the period, or as we get older, as we age, the brain slowly loses the skills to regulate our hormone level regulation or even our body functions. And because of this, older people, they might produce more stressful hormones, and it might take a long time to regulate the responses, which means that the sympathetic system might be working fine, but the parasympathetic system might take little longer, which again means that you might be in a stressful situation, but it might take a while to really relax, rest, or calm. And these are list of the reasons why this might happen, right? In retirement, people are isolated. They are suddenly lost the things that they had routine for, because once you are in retirement, if you do not plan your retirement properly ahead of time, you suddenly are completed your job and then you do not have a plans, then there is a big void and you don't know how to fill up that void. That also is a stressful situation. Sometimes people just lose a job and they are forced to be in a retirement period. And again, that time they may not have plans for their financial, emotional, physical well being. Sometimes there is death of a spouse or a family member, which again is not necessarily that we are aware of, that is not planned, right? Sudden happens. Like there are situations like divorce or some marital separations, or even difficulty in marital relationships. So not necessarily these are divorce or separations, but people are still living in a situation where they are not having healthy married life. Isolation or boredom are the most common stressful situations that what I have heard from older adult people, because again, their families, their children, they are having their own life, they have their own jobs, they might have moved out of their homes, and the older adults, either they are isolated, alone, do not have any things to do, because their whole life was completely engaged with taking care of their loved ones and be at the jobs. Death of a friend, family member, again, major injury or illnesses, being alone at home to deal with those illnesses or injuries is again going to be challenging. Sometimes financial challenges, because older adults, they may not have opportunity to save their funds for their retirement planning. Technology related issue, think about the technology. We all are working right now from home, and older adults who are unable to get out of the homes, they are left with this technology to connect with their children, grandchildren all across the globe, and they may not be well tech savvy, right? Oh, again, I mean, tech savvy, talk about it. Like, even I don't feel well technologically savvy. I have to get access via my husband or my son to get some help. Sometimes there are children or grandchildren related issues, and again, these issues doesn't have to be always like difficulties, because as senior adults or older adults, we have our hope or expectations to be involved with our children or grandchildren's life. But reality is that everyone has their own priorities, own lifestyles, own management of the time, and these things might make it difficult. As a grandparents, maybe grandparents want to spend time with their grandchildren, but grandchildren may not have that time because of their own priorities or their own time schedules. And these situations or these expectations that you are putting on yourself might be a stressful situation. So, how stress is expressed? Stress is expressed at different levels. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be behavioral, it could be cognitive or spiritual. So this slide, again, I'm not going to go through each and every statement, what is mentioned here, but what I want you to think about is that when you think about stress, stress is not just a physical, it is all across. And if you see this, this is actually the wheel. This is very, this is the indigenous way of looking at your balance of life. So if you think about it, all these four things needs to be balanced in your life to keep yourself as a healthy. So emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual. These are four kind of like balances that needs to be kept in a well form to have your life in the way that you might be able to manage. So I really wanted to think about your own wheel, because I always think that, you know what, I have to define what is my own wheel. What are my physical needs to keep myself happy and healthy? What are my emotional needs? What is the spirituality that I believe in? So spirituality doesn't mean that, oh, I have to go to the temple or I have to go to the church. Spirituality means that anything that makes you feel spiritual, and you can define spirituality for your own sake. What is my behavior looks like to keep myself sane or feel I'm okay to be in this behavioral stage? And what is my cognitive? What is my cognitive? How my brain works? What is my brain telling me? What is the way that I can contain myself so that I can take care of my physical, emotional behavior and spiritual needs? So just think about this cycle, because again, they impact on each other. Your physical impacts on your mental. If my body is in my pain, then of course mentally I feel sad or I feel painful. If I am really not good in my mental stage, it is going to take toll on my body. It is going to take toll on my emotions. Because if I'm mentally sad or depressed or anxious, emotionally I'm not in the right space to take care of myself or for others. And again, it might present as headache or body ache on my physical level. So the reason I'm trying to have a little bit more conversation here is try to help understand yourself, like these all areas of your life needs to be balanced if you want to work on the stressful situations. So this is just in COVID time, older adults or care providers, especially in isolation, and those with cognitive decline because of their age, not because of any other things, but because of the age. If there is decline, if there is some memory loss or dementia, they are going to become more anxious and also angry and stressed, agitated, withdrawn during the pandemic or while they are in quarantine. And it is important to be mindful regarding this situation. So you yourself should be able to understand if anybody is having or presenting with these kind of similar expressions or behavior. We just have to be kind to themselves and to ourselves if we are going through these kind of emotions during this time. Now think about how the family members react when we are in situations of the stress. These are the combinations, right? So family might present as they are so worried, they don't know what to do, and that's why they are worried. They are they are anxious again for the same reasoning. Sometimes they're frustrated because they are trying to help and nobody's taking that help. They might have some anger, right? Because again, I'm there to help you, but you are not taking my help. I know the ways that you can deal with this, but you don't know those. So that can come across as anger. There might be exhaustion because I'm like, oh my God, like I can't do anything more than what I have capacity for. So they might be exhausted by taking care of their loved ones. Sometimes there is guilt, shame, and resentments, right? Because sometimes it's kind of like, oh my God, I feel so guilty that I don't have time to take care of my parents. I really want to, but I don't have time. And there is some shame around it, right? Or some resentments. Sometimes some of the family members, like whose parents are back home because we all are immigrated here, and then there is a guilt and shame there as well. There is loss or hopelessness or grief around it. Again, lost because I don't know what to do. I'm lost here. Or there is a loss where there is no option for you to provide any support. There is grief and hopelessness. And grief, loss and grief are common themes that I have seen throughout my work. And when I talk about loss and grief, it's not just about loss and grief about someone's death. Loss and grief can be associated with any other thing. So, for example, I'll just throw example like I do a lot of work with families whose children identify themselves from towards LGBTQ community. So maybe their youth they are like gay, lesbian, and the parents who might come from different cultural background who do not want to accept the reality of their children exposing themselves to either gay, lesbian, or transgender, they have this loss and grief regarding the identity. So I'm just keep throwing you the example regarding loss and grief in some other content. People who have addiction issues, maybe someone who is a smoker and they decide to quit smoking, they have loss and grief regarding their connection with smoking. So just wanted to give some connection regarding loss and grief other than just the death itself. There are health and safety concerns. The people who may be drinking a lot, and if they're driving, there is a health and safety concerns, right? Or the people who have conditions like blood pressure or diabetes, their families might have some health and safety concerns regarding their health. And then law and legal involvement because of, again, these facts. So, how families react? Sometimes they react as shaming and blaming because they are like, you are responsible for your own actions, and that's what it is. So, they might just shame them or blame them. Sometimes families will just interfere by giving their choices, advices that they think are the best. Sometimes they may be unsupportive and they might say that, you know what, just deal on your own. I'm not going to be there. I won't be helping you for anything, or enabling by doing everything for the person who probably should take care of their own actions or their own decisions. So these are, again, there are different, another couple of things that you might want to add here, but I'm just throwing some of the examples are the most common that what I have seen as family members. So this is the slide I was talking about, which I just want to, you know what, now probably it might be helpful if I just do my hand things and that might help you. So if you want to watch me while you are watching this slide, what is this window of tolerance? So window of tolerance in layman terms, I use this word a lot, especially with people who are dealing with traumatic experiences, but also people with stressful situations that sometimes they are unable to manage. So window of tolerance, if you look at my hands right now, in between two hands, the space that I have in between two hands is the space where I know what my window of tolerance looks like, which means I am in a space where I am able to manage my physical, mental, spiritual well being. When I am not in this window of tolerance, which means that my window becomes bigger because I'm out of my window of tolerance. And that's where I am dysregulated. I am stressed, which means that I might present emotion which is either hyper or hypo. Hyper, where I'm angry, agitated, yelling, screaming, doing something which is inappropriate, which is not commonly that I do when I am in my window of tolerance. When I'm hypo, which means that I am so shocked, I don't know how to react, and then I become extremely zoned out, numb emotionally, and then either I'm frozen or I shut down, I don't talk. So that's a hypoarousal. So the reason I'm saying these things loud here is you all need to find out what is your window of tolerance when you are capable to make sure that your physical, mental, spiritual well-being is in a space that you can manage. The minute you are out of your window, you need to think about whether I am hyper aroused or hypo aroused. Because based on that, you are going to use your stress management skills. And that's why you just think about your window of tolerance. Okay. And we will talk about this a little bit as I move. So these are the signs of like chronic hyperarousal and hypoarousal. So again, when you are in hyperarousal, you might be emotionally overwhelmed. You might have a panicky. You might be hyper vigilant. You might think about like, oh my God, I just want to feel safe, but I can't, right? But again, remembering that hyperarousal also might lead to immobility freezing. So it doesn't have to be hypo or hyper. All you need to understand is what I need to do when I am out of that window of tolerance, which means I'm stressed, right? Because when you are in that window of tolerance zone, you are able to manage your stress in a wise manner. So another thing is, again, if you consider your window of tolerance, generally what I say is look at this brain and now look at this slide and look at my hand. So if you see here, there is prefrontal lobe, which is executive stage. So I consider my hand as a brain right now. This is my prefrontal lobe, which is my knuckles and front of my fingers. Now, this is the limbic system, which is my emotional stage. So I consider my palm as a limbic system. Okay. And then survival state, which is brainstem. So this is my wrist and below is my brainstem. So when I am in my window of tolerance, my brain is absolutely the way it is right now. When I'm out of my window of tolerance, what starts happening? I start flipping my fingers, which means my lid is freaking out now, which means that I am not in my prefrontal lobe in a manageable way because I am trying to learn what is happening for me. My limbic system, which is emotional state, is asking me, am I loved? Is there anybody who can help me right now? And my survival state or the brain stem is asking me, am I safe or do I have to take some action to bring back to me in my window of tolerance? So use this hand model. Think about, is your flip leading? Like if your lids are flipping, just try to think about it. Use your hand. I'm like, oh my God, is it something happening to me? Am I opening my fingers right now so that I'm out of my window of tolerance, or am I able to bring it back? So this is just to help you understand that you can use your hand as a brain. Your hand is actually going to help you understand whether your brainstem, where it is, your limbic system, with your emotional stage, what are you doing, and your executive state, how you are able to manage your executive stage. So if you are not the person who is stressed out, but if you observe someone who is getting out of that window of tolerance, then what is your role? Because I'm not here just to tell you that you need to get better, how you can help others to get better too. As I said, the funny thing is, this morning when I told my son that I'm doing this presentation for the stress management, his question was, Mom, are you 100% sure that you take care of yourself and you are able to manage your stress 100%? And my answer is absolutely no, because I'm a human being. I will get stressed. I might have situations where I'm not able to manage my stress 100%, but I do know people to reach out to who can help me to control my emotions within the moment. And that's what the important piece is. Nobody here is going to be a perfect stress manager. However, we all are going to be okay to find out the resources for us. So when you see someone that are in stress, or they say that, you know what, I need some help, don't panic. First of all, you don't need to be panicked. It's okay. Appreciate or acknowledge for the courage that they are coming and telling you or asking for that help. Don't be judgmental. Just remain non-judgmental. Try to understand what is happening for them. Engage them during the conversation. Learn and listen before providing any advice, because if you don't know what they are looking for, then you might end up giving the wrong advice. Another thing I always say to people is that don't give advice, because some people just want to vent out. They just want to share, and that itself is a coping mechanism for their stress management. So respect that. When someone shares something with you, it's not necessary that they are looking to solve their problem or find a solution from them. All you can do is provide the information or education if you have enough. If you do not have anything, you can provide the resources. Create hope. Tell them that things are going to be better. Empower them, because you really want to empower them. They have the skills and capacity that they may or may not be aware of. Express your involvement only if needed. And always take the professional help if you are unsure, because you might hurt a person rather than helping them if you are giving them the wrong advice. So be mindful. Another thing I always like to say or stress upon is, this is called trauma informed practice that I love the most. And actually, I have learned a lot of things because of the trauma informed practice. I'll just add to what is trauma informed practice. But in layman terms, just changing our mindset. Instead of saying, what is wrong with this individual? Or, oh my God, this is always the case. He is such a brat. Rather than think about what has happened to this individual that they are presenting this behavior. So if you shift your thinking process from wrong to what has happened, it will give you opportunity to understand that individual better than, again, assumptions or preconceptions, or being judgmental around the behavior that they are presenting. I always say, do not focus on the behavior. If you focus on the behavior, you will always have wrong diagnosis. But if you focus on what is the situation, what is the core reasoning why this person is behaving this way, then you will see the person a little bit differently. So you really have to realize what is happening, right? You really have to realize, you have to understand something has happened to this individual. You want to recognize, and once you recognize, then you can respond in a proper manner. If you do not recognize the stress that person is going through, you might respond, which is not a good response. And resist. I always say resist the urge to solve the problem. Resist to re-traumatize people. Resist to hurt people. Be kind. Be honest. Be transparent. Be open to learn from their experience and understand them what is happening for them. And that's the trauma informed practice in nutshell. Be open, be honest, make connection, give them safety, make them stabilize, give them choices and control to make their decision. Work in collaboration. Let's do it together. Don't leave them alone. So that's the trauma informed practice in nutshell. I'm just going to keep track of time. It's almost time. Okay. So now we are going to talk about like a couple of things where I will say that what are the things that you need to be aware of if you want to control yourself, right? So two things I want you to be mindful about. Things that you can control and the things that I cannot control. So always stop, think, and then act. Think about what are the things I'm able to control right now and focus on those. The things that you cannot control, leave them because they are not in your control. So you're not going to waste your time thinking about it. Always try to be calm. Determination and your willpower and balance. As I said, balance in all the areas are important. As I said, the things I can't control, just do not worry about it because the only thing that you can control is what is going to happen, how I'm going to manage, what are my choices, how I am going to make the decision regarding those choices, which are going to impact on my future in the moment and over the period. So I again, you all are aware of the yoga practices. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the mindfulness activities. So as you know, in pandemics, people are really focusing on mindfulness activity. And mindfulness activity, again, you can choose the way that you feel is comfortable for you. So the reason why I always say three things are most important for being mindful and practicing the mindfulness activity. It's awareness, right? Intentionally bring your focus to the present. Do not let your mind roam around regarding your past or future. Be in that present moment and focus here and now. Do not think about anything else and acceptance. When you are doing a mindfulness practice, even though I say that be aware, be in the present moment, your mind will still wander and accept the fact that, you know what, right now, I want to bring it back. However, it is wandering, and that's okay, but I'm just going to pull it back right now. So for me, mindfulness activity is really hard because I'm a kind of a person whose brain is always occupied with thousands of things. So if this mindfulness activity doesn't work for me, then I choose different mindfulness activity. Walking is mindful activity for me. So I choose that. Another thing, yoga, as you all know, and of course, I'm not going to spend time at all on these yoga practices because you have a lot of experts in this group who always talk about yoga practices. So mindfulness yoga practice is another way of taking care of yourself. These are again, I use them as the 7 pillars of my self-care. So again, knowledge and health literacy. So if you do not have the knowledge, try and find the right people who can provide you some kind of knowledge. Mental well-being, again, you can choose your mental well-being the way that you want to be mentally safe. Physical activities, running, jogging, walking, swimming, whatever that looks like for you. Healthy eating, most important thing again, healthy eating means that trying to make sure that you are using all the nutrition components like carbohydrates, proteins, fat in equal amount, or the way that Health Canada or nutrition guidelines will tell you, because people just go on this couple of like health eating activities that they think are the best for them, but not each and everything is best for you. So if you are choosing to go on some diet, you really want to make sure that you understand what that diet means for your body, not what it means on the internet or on that Google search. So learn what is important for your body and what your body needs, because vegetarians might need more B complex, or as the age grows, like you might need more vitamin D. So think about those. Risk avoidance, again, like not smoking, not drinking too much than what is required, good hygiene, most important, and rational use of the products and services. And I really focus on that because, again, at that age, sometimes people just think that, oh, I need this vitamin, I need that vitamin. And then you are combining multiple vitamins, which may interact with each other in a negative format. So be very mindful regarding when you are using multiple vitamins or B complex tablets, all those things. So just be careful about that. And again, this is just another slide just to add like how you want to have your stress-free life, start your day happy, dress the way that you like, try to remove the stresses that you are aware of. I always say that make a list of the things that makes you stress and then try to figure out like which are the most common that you see during the day and how you want to work on those, prioritize on those. Take breaks all the time, drink a lot of water, define yourself, what your priorities are, what are the things that makes you happy. Always focus on you. If you are well, you can take care of others. If you are unwell, you cannot take care of others. So stress-free life looks like what you want for yourself and not what others expect from you. And I want you to focus on that thing again. This is just the tips for good mental health, be active, eat healthy, same things. But I just thought that I will just bring a couple of like different colorful slides at the end just to bring some smile on your face. So these are the most common things. And most important thing is be kind to yourself and others. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have a stress, but always try to build a chain so that we all can come together and get that help that we need. And finding the right mental health professional for you if you need. It's not that you have to, but if you need, be open to talk to their psychotherapists, psychologists, social workers. If you have a family physician who can help you, that's fine. If you really need a psychiatrist, that's totally fine. There is no shame, stigma, guilt if you need to access a psychiatrist. If you do not want to go to the psychiatrist, you can always try to get to the community health clinics, which might have some options for you to explore some kind of conversations regarding the stress management. There are a lot of stress management programs which are free for seniors, older adults, or even for children. So try to find wherever they are applicable. And that's all for my talk. Now the floor is yours. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity, and feel free to ask questions. So I'm gonna stop sharing so that I can see you. Is that okay?
Thank you, Sonali ji. Before people start asking you question, my name is Mahesh Nileshwar. I'm one of the group members. Thank you so much for coming over and talking on such an important topic, right? We take stress very lightly. So I think you have highlighted its importance. And also we all know it is important to take care of ourselves, but we don't know how to do it. And so your presentation covered everything. And as you already know, Kunal Chitraji and Mansi ji have been taking yoga classes, and it is one of the stress relieving things to do. So I'm so proud to be associated with all of you. Thank you again, and please do come back some other time to refresh. We are doing so many things, as you rightly said. We tend to forget, so we need a recharge, or a refresh of what you have just said. So I hope you come back and talk to our seniors again and talk to all of us. Okay,
No
thank you.
problem.
Thank you so
Anytime.
much. Thank you, Chitraji, for organizing this. I'm going to let everybody unmute yourselves. I'm going to stop the recording so that the Q&A is just amongst ourselves. Okay. Thank
That's
you.
great. Thank you.